These aren't movies Gen Z skipped because they're outdated or problematic. They're the ones nobody ever told them about. So these are 10 American movies from the 90s that deserved better, and still hold up today. Right after the success of Reservoir Dogs, Steve Buscemi took a rare lead role in a small indie called Ed and His Dead Mother. Directed by Jonathan Wax, it's one of those quiet 90s films that sits somewhere between comedy and horror. Buscemi plays Ed, a hardware store owner struggling after his mother's death. His uncle, played by Ned Beatty, tries to help him move on. Then a salesman named A.J. Patel shows up with a strange offer. For $1,000, he can bring Ed's mother back. Ed agrees, and of course it doesn't go the way he expects. When his mother returns, she's not the same person. The film even opens by telling us where this is heading. Ed ends up decapitating her after her behavior becomes increasingly disturbing. At its core, the story is about letting go, but it handles that idea in a very direct and darkly funny way. The script is full of sharp lines and the cast really carries it. John Glover leans into the role of the shady salesman, Ned Beatty adds a lot of humour, and Miriam Margolyes brings something unsettling to the mother. But it's Buscemi who holds everything together, playing a man who simply can't move on until he's forced to. There was a stretch in the late 80s and early 90s when James Woods felt like the perfect choice for any slick, shady character. He had the voice, the timing, and that nervous, fast-talking energy that made him a natural fit for con men. In Diggstown, he plays Gabriel Kane, a con man who heads to a remote town with a plan to make money fast. Teaming up with an aging boxer played by Louis Gossett Jr., he sets up a wild bet. Honey Roy Palmer has to beat 10 of Diggstown's best fighters in a single day. Kane is no saint, but the man he's dealing with is worse. Bruce Dern plays John Gillen, the town's richest and most powerful figure, and the whole film turns into a battle of scams, deals, and mind games. The boxing gives the story its hook, but a lot of the fun comes from everything happening around it. And even though the movie didn't make much noise when it came out, it's still a very easy watch. Based on David Mamet's play, American Buffalo is a small, tense crime drama built almost entirely around talk, suspicion, and bad decisions. Dennis Franz plays Donnie, the owner of a junk shop in a rundown part of town. Sean Nelson is Bobby, the younger guy who spends time around the store, and Dustin Hoffman plays Teach, a greasy drifter who always seems to be hanging around. Once Teach comes up with a plan to rob a man believed to have a safe full of rare coins, everything starts to unravel. This was one of Mamet's most acclaimed early plays, though not the easiest one to turn into a film. At one point, Al Pacino was set to play Teach, a role he had already performed on stage, but when that didn't happen, Dustin Hoffman stepped in. And Hoffman is great here. His Teach feels dirty, unstable, and constantly on edge. Reviews were mixed when the film came out. It failed commercially, and over time it was mostly forgotten. Which is a shame because the acting is excellent and the film keeps you locked in the whole way through. This may be one of Nicolas Cage's best performances, and the fact that it came in a Martin Scorsese film only makes it stranger that people seem to have forgotten it. Cage plays Frank Pierce, a burned-out ambulance driver working the night shift in New York. He's exhausted, alcoholic, unable to sleep, and haunted by the people he couldn't save. The film doesn't follow a very direct plot. It feels more like a descent into Frank's state of mind, showing the city through his eyes as he moves from one emergency to the next. Cage is excellent here. A lot of the performance lives in his face, in the way he looks completely drained even when he's still trying to keep going. The script was written by Paul Schrader, and you can feel traces of his earlier work with Scorsese in it. At moments it brings to mind Taxi Driver, but the film still has its own identity. The nighttime images of New York are unforgettable, and the dark humor works surprisingly well alongside everything Frank is going through. It may not be the easiest film to watch, and that may be one reason it ended up overlooked, but it's a remarkable film, and one that deserves far more attention than it gets. The Hard Way follows Nick Lang, a big Hollywood star known for action roles who wants to be taken seriously. To prepare for a new movie, he arranges to shadow a real cop, Lieutenant John Moss, played by James Woods, who's tracking a serial killer known as the Party Crasher. The setup is familiar, but the film really lives off the dynamic between the two. Fox plays against type as an overly enthusiastic actor who treats everything like a performance, while Woods brings constant intensity and barely hides his frustration. That contrast drives the comedy. Their scenes together have a lot of energy, and the back and forth between them carries the whole film. The script moves quickly, the dialogue is sharp, and the supporting cast adds a lot, especially Delroy Lindo as a police captain who's obsessed with Lang. It's a fun, fast-moving film that's easy to get into and hard not to enjoy. Clay Pigeons is a small-town noir set in Montana, where Clay's life spirals after his best friend stages his own suicide to frame him. Trying to keep things from falling apart, Clay ends up tangled with Amanda, who only makes things worse, and then crosses paths with Lester Long, a man who turns out to be a serial killer. As bodies start piling up and the FBI steps in, all the evidence begins pointing straight at Clay. Vince Vaughn plays Lester, and this was one of those periods where he was taking real creative risks. Some of them worked better than others, but here it absolutely pays off. He brings a friendly, almost casual energy to the role, which makes the character even more unsettling. He latches onto Joaquin Phoenix's Clay, who's already falling apart under the weight of everything happening, and starts using his talent for killing to help Clay deal with his problems. It's all framed as friendship, the kind Clay never asked for but somehow can't escape. And in a strange way, the film even makes that dynamic feel oddly likable. This was also before Phoenix fully broke into the mainstream and became the kind of actor people now talk about as one of the greats. But even here you can see what sets him apart. His performance feels layered, finding something offbeat in a character that could have easily been played straight. It's a shame Zero Effect slipped past most audiences because it's an entertaining and genuinely intriguing watch from beginning to end. Bill Pullman plays the brilliant but eccentric detective Daryl Zero, with Ben Stiller as his loyal assistant. The case seems simple at first. Ryan O'Neal's character hires Zero to recover a missing set of keys. From there, the story keeps shifting direction, revealing new angles and surprises. If I say more, it would ruin the fun for anyone who hasn't seen it. This 90s Holmes & Watson delivers more than just a clever mystery. It feels sharp and unpredictable all the way through. Written and directed by Jake Kasdan, the film keeps you guessing until the final moments. One of the standout American indie films of the 1990s, Smoke was written by Paul Auster and directed by Wayne Wang. It began as a short Christmas story Auster wrote for the New York Times about a cigar shop owner named Augie Wren. Wang encouraged him to turn it into a film. The script took time to develop, but it finally reached the screen with Harvey Keitel as Augie and William Hurt as Paul, a widowed writer. Set in Brooklyn and centered on a small cigar shop, the film follows the people who pass through its doors and the connections they form. Smoke has a mood that feels completely its own. This is not the harsh New York of crime dramas. There is no Travis Bickle here, and the streets are not mean. Instead, Wang and Auster present a city that feels almost comforting. It can be dangerous at times, but it remains livable because of the people who fill it. Ordinary men and women who talk, listen, and show small acts of kindness. Through its winding subplots and quiet stories, the film becomes a celebration of human connection. Directed by Kiva Rosenfeld, 20 Bucks has a simple but clever idea. The film follows the journey of a single $20 bill as it passes from hand to hand, taking us through the more colourful corners of an unnamed American city and into the lives of the people who briefly possess it. It begins when a woman withdraws a 20 from an ATM, only to watch it blow away and land with a homeless woman, played by Linda Hunt. A boy steals the bill, and from there we move to Sam, portrayed by Brendan Fraser, who is about to get married. On the night of his rehearsal dinner, his wealthy future father-in-law gives him the 20 as a symbolic gesture about the power of money. Sam sees it as an insult. Frustrated, he hands the note to a stripper during his bachelor party, adding one more link to the bill's already winding path across the city. The story has an unusual origin. It was based on a script written in 1935 by Endre Bohem that was never produced. Decades later, his son Leslie revived it and updated it for the 1990s. Even so, the film feels completely at home in that decade. Its structure and tone suit the era perfectly. Critics responded warmly, but the film struggled commercially. It has a cult following without trying to be clever about it. Those who know it tend to feel they've discovered something special, one of the most overlooked small films of the 1990s. Fearless is unquestionably a masterpiece of American cinema, even though it was directed by Australian filmmaker Peter Weir. Adapted by Rafael Iglesias from his own novel, the film follows Max, played by Jeff Bridges, who survives a devastating plane crash. The crash sequence remains one of the most upsetting ever shown on screen. Max helps other passengers escape and is hailed as a hero. The real change comes afterward. He no longer feels fear. Weir doesn't stint in rendering the glories of a life without fear, but always returns to their costs. The movie builds beautifully to its own shattering climax that manages to be as life-affirming as it is horrifying. And Rosie Perez's performance as young mother who lost her child on the flight is a career high that rightly snagged her an Oscar nomination. There simply has been nothing like it before or since, and belongs beside It's a Wonderful Life as a testament to how precious and fragile any life is.